1 2, check 1 2. Are we live? It looks like it. What's going on there, folks? Good evening. It is the Earthmaster back here on this Wednesday night, July 12th, 2023. It's about 10:04 p.m. here, California time. Latest activity shows looks like a 5.2, a pretty deep earthquake out here outside of Japan. Nothing showing up yet on the USGS model, but it is on the EMSC globe here. Notice that 5.2 red flag, large circle. Definitely watch that, see what is kicking up out there. We've seen awfully quiet conditions out here across the Western Pacific, and that has intensified earthquake activity out here across the Eastern Pacific, and that includes areas south of the border, south of Southern California. We're watching a little swarm of activity here into the Baja California area. Seen a 4.1 and a couple other smaller earthquakes out there throughout the evening time period. Watching the southern branch here of the San Andreas Fault, because a lot of times what happens down here across the Gulf of California obviously affects areas up here along the plate boundary. So we'll continue to watch that for some potential movement. A little bit further up north into the Bay of San Francisco, fairly quiet. A couple smaller earthquakes being reported. But for the most part, things very quiet across Northern California. A couple twos coming in. Up into Oregon, we got one earthquake out here. And sometimes this earthquake activity scares me a little bit because it is much closer out here to the Cascadia fold and thrust belt. This is a Cascadia subduction zone that's very capable of producing at least a 9.0 or greater magnitude earthquake. That would, not even fear-mongering, completely devastate the coastal communities out here and send a Pacific-wide tsunami across the area. So that's not a fairy tale. That's a legit scenario that one day this subduction zone will produce a significant earthquake out here across the communities, and no doubt be responsible for some tremendous damage out there. The latest earthquake, though, looks like a 1.7. That was followed up by a 1.5 explosion out there around the Tillamook, Oregon area. Not for sure what's going on up there in the mountains, but apparently we got a little bit of explosive activity occurring there. Yellowstone National Park, we were watching a swarm of activity. Let's go ahead and see what's going on out there from earlier. Yeah, come on. There we go. Maple Creek. So there's some of the localized earthquake activity, a lot more than what the USGS is showing here across the area. Now, this is not a significant pattern of earthquake activity. In fact, they're only showing about 8 earthquakes out here on the USGS map. But as you can see, I don't need to tell you guys how to count. There's a lot more than 8 earthquakes showing up here on this graph. And you got to remember, every single one of these spikes, excuse me, is earthquakes. So you can probably take that 10 number and times that by at least 5 or 6 maybe to get the correct number out there across Yellowstone National Park. Now there's not a lot, but there's definitely a swarm kicking up here across the Yellowstone area. Oklahoma, Texas area, last earthquake shows a 2.5 near Dover. Couple 2.5s it looks like near Dover, 2.2. This is an area that has seen a pretty good amount of swarming here in the last 24 to 48 hours. Now, notice these checkered boxes out here. Those are not your beautiful farmhouses or, your typical campground sites, right? We would expect to see that here along the West Coast, driving out to a dirt road to your campground. But these are not campgrounds whatsoever. These are oil fields out here. And there's quite a few of them out here across this area of Oklahoma, and more specifically located across this field here that has numerous tanks. And that is a good sign there of a major flow of oil across the area. more tanks, indicating more flow of oil. And that's where we're seeing that increasing earthquake activity here today. And in fact, over the last couple of days, it looks like Oklahoma has been inundated with earthquake activity across the oil fields. And that's, it's not fear-mongering. That's just the facts, man. Across Puerto Rico, still watching here. This is a little concerning. Definitely a little concerning because the Puerto Rico Trench area has been showing some elevated earthquake activity here over the last few weeks. This is the last 24 hours showing some fours out here, right up against the Puerto Rico Trench. Somewhat deep, somewhat shallow. We've been noticing here, and I got to pull up the last 7 days of all magnitudes out here to kind of give you a good indicator of what's going on up here around the Puerto Rico Trench. Definitely noticing an increase here of seismic activity within the subduction zone that was triggered. We've seen all this earthquake activity prior to the 6.6, but also the 6.6, by the way, struck on July 10th, a couple days ago here, outside the Puerto Rico Trench area. This is along the Atlantic Oceanic crest. So this is activity occurring outside the plate boundary, but up here along the oceanic crest. So imagine the stress or the thrust and the strain being applied up here in order to at least produce a 6.6. So this area is very capable of producing a mega quake. And I'm talking well above an 8-pointer that would probably send a tsunami out here across the Gulf and the eastern portion of the country. I'm not going to go specifically into that detail tonight. I did cover this video, the potential for a mega quake out here across the Puerto Rico Trench about a year or so ago. I will include this at the end of my video for an up next video here on YouTube. So make sure you watch that. Okay? It does have the very strong potential of seeing a mega quake out here. It's a major subduction zone, but it's been awfully quiet in terms of that's a major trench if you really think about it. Some very deep waters. But also the deep waters are an indicator of some major subduction zone activity. So we'll watch this as it is further showing some increasing activity here within the Puerto Rico Trench area following that 6.6 earthquake. Watch for that video. Quite a few 4s, 3s, and 2s coming up here across that area. Further to the south here, we did see some activity across the divergent boundary of the northern East Pacific Rise. Now, this is a fracture zone here that kind of separates the oceanic seafloor, adds further strain up here against the Middle America Trench. Not a whole lot showing up there for now. Let me double check here. There's that newer activity here across the Eastern Pacific Rise, or at least the northern section of it, 5.3, and some other earthquake activity occurring within it. Well, watch this region up here across the Middle America Trench for some further large-scale activity. It's been increasing here lately. Watch that area across Mexico, Guatemala, El Salvador, and the Nicaragua area. South America region, some smaller earthquakes there from yesterday and today. Although it looks like there was a 6-pointer in the mix there. Notice that large earthquake there, 6.0, stirring up there across the area of... I'm not going to click on it because I know exactly that that will not take me to my destination. But we do want to see what's going on out there because USGS is not reporting that earthquake at all. Whatever, they're not even reporting it. So we have to go in here for ourselves and see what's going on here. So last 24 hours here, it looks like Where was that earthquake supposedly reported? It looks like down around the Chile area, 6.0 within this area here, but I'm goodness, I'm not seeing it. So where is it? Up here? No, 4.1. Obviously a 6-pointer would be much larger on the circle there. Yeah, I'm a little worried about this because they're showing a 6-pointer here, and that is obviously not showing up there across the areas of their own graph here. I don't know what's going on there. What's this earthquake here? I only see a 3.9, so why there's a 6-pointer showing up there is any guess. Your guess is probably just as good as mine. USGS is not showing anything up there across the South America region. And when you click on this here, that 6.0 shows from July 12th, 4:34 p.m., about 10 kilometers deep. So unfortunately, the Earthquake 3D Globe is very hesitant about what's showing up here and who is the reporting agency. But I don't believe it's a legit earthquake because they're not showing any specific activity out here across the area. Did it just happen? Doesn't look like it. So unfortunately that's one of the things that you have to watch for is false earthquake activity, and apparently, it's why I'm very hesitant about including EMSC GeoNet servers on the globe, because this is not a legit earthquake. That 6.0 would probably show up across quite a few seismograph stations, and I don't see it. I really don't. I really don't see that earthquake. But we'll leave up the EMSC for now. I'm very. I think I want to include just the USGS here on the globe, because the EMSC reports some false earthquake data that is not legit. I'm sorry, but the USGS is one of the folks out here, one of the agencies here that report legit earthquakes. Anyone can say that there's a phantom earthquake out here, 7.0 in New Zealand, and it comes to be just a false earthquake out here across New Zealand. Maybe it's a 5.0 deep into the Kermadec Trench that triggered a reading up here in New Zealand. And I'm not a fan of the fake earthquake reports out here, so I may have to do away with the reporting here from the GeoNet globe or the EMSC globe. I'll kind of monitor that and see how it goes. Sometimes GeoNet servers are first to report earthquake activity, but at the same time, I'm not into the false earthquake reporting. I just don't like that one bit. All right, so let's go ahead and move on here and look at legit earthquakes here off the coast here of Japan. Noda, looks like Noda, Japan, 35 kilometers deep here into the Japan Trench for a 5.0. That is somewhat elevated activity here because it has been awfully quiet across the Western Pacific. Things have been very quiet here recently. It almost seems as though things have become stuck out here across the adjacent plates as well, with building earthquake activity across the Eastern Pacific. We do have a 4.4 coming into the it looks like the Eastern Pacific rise right now. Let me see what we got for earthquake activity. I don't have anything out there specifically for that area, but it almost looks like it's occurring out here within the Divergent boundaries here. There's a couple different fracture zones here in the East Pacific Rise. If that's the case, then we can expect further momentum movement here across California and the West Coast area for some earthquake activity. All right, before we jump on that, let's go check out the tremor activity here. Cascadia tremor, zip zero, nada. Not a whole lot going on. So we'll continue our journey out here. New Zealand, not a whole lot going on here across the New Zealand area for now. That is an extreme quiet area. And also across the Loyalty Islands, Tonga, Fiji area, very quiet in terms of earthquake activity for now. Not looking at any major elevated earthquake activity uptick across the Indonesia Islands area. Just some very small movement. But we'll watch this most recent earthquake there, the 3.9. That may be giving a telltale sign of some increasing movement out here across the Western Pacific and adjacent places. But for now, I do think we have to watch the Eastern Pacific areas. Those areas tend to follow, right? You got a northwestern movement here of momentum. When things come to a halt out here across the areas of the Western Pacific, things tend to pick up here across the Eastern Pacific. So watch this very closely. All right, the Atlantic pretty quiet. Let's go ahead and check out the most recent activity here from the Solar Ham site. We're waiting. I think we're all waiting for an X flare, right? I believe that's going to happen pretty soon. We do have a ginormous sunspot region here on the northeastern limb of the sun that is continuously flaring with pretty much M flares. You can see it there on the image there, the UV rays. The look at the magnetogram shows a very complex structure in a very large sunspot region that does harbor some potential for some M flare and some possible X flare activity. That's one to watch, folks. Unfortunately, I hate mentioning it because it will probably disintegrate and just harbor some C flare activity, but I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful that this thing will pick up in terms of a flare activity. This southern edge here of the sunspot region looks like it may be harboring a little bit of instability. It's a ginormous sunspot. If you look at the visible, let me bring up the visible disk here of the sun. That thing is huge. Look at that, 3363. And you would think, just because of its size, that it would probably produce an X flare, but no. There's no complex structure within that 3363 core. That remained, and basically you could have a sunspot that size, that's probably 100 times that size, and it would take up a good portion of the sun, and it would remain stable. There's no instability that would pose a major threat for flaring activity amongst 3363. It's a ginormous sunspot, but that's it. It's pretty much picture perfect, and that's about it. There's no harboring for any major flares, but we'll continue to watch this area down here. There's a little bit of development south of the core, but if this thing doesn't grow, then it can pretty much discredit any further activity there with that sunspot. It's a massive sunspot, but it doesn't matter. You can have anything 100 times as big as this. You have to have the complex structure that this one harbors, which is the complex cores here. Notice the color differences, very close to one another. Also over here as well, up here on the northwestern limb as well. But we'll just continue to watch that, right? Looks like 99% chance for a solar flare. It's already flaring. M flare at 55, 20% chance for an X flare. I think if anything's going to happen, It's going to be from this 3372, and that's my word. I put my word on that. I think we're going to see an X flare probably pretty soon from that area. The aurora forecast, Thursday's coming up. Make sure you double check your sources. I seen KFOR, KOMO, a couple other news agencies and weather stations out there reporting a major solar weather event coming up tomorrow. Well, if you've been watching my videos past couple nights, I've been downgrading that activity, and they've been upgrading it. So who do you think is right? Who do you think is right? The person that knows their space weather activity, or the news agency that's just trying to get some views? Yeah, okay, there we go. I'm not going to go into the rant that I did a couple nights ago. Actually, I lost a couple subscribers from that, by the way. My rants tend to, the truth hurts, right? The truth tends to hurt. But I lost probably about 10 or 15 subscribers. So I don't want to lose anyone out here, but I do want to produce the facts to everyone that's watching this video. And when I say something, I mean it. And as you can tell here on the earthquake, or at least on the 3-day geomagnetic forecast, there's no major solar storm coming up on Thursday. So I try to present the best I can to the viewers the factual truth. And a lot of people don't like to hear it. They don't want to hear it. They want to hear fantasy. They want to hear fear mongering. They want to hear false information. But I can't do that. I can't do that. I'm sorry. I can't do the fear mongering. All right. Storm Prediction Center here across the area. Current day one outlook, we're seeing a little bit of tornado activity up there across the Chicago area. Throughout the night, it looks like at least about a 5% probability across areas of Toledo, Ohio, Fort Wayne, Indiana, South Bend, Indiana, Gary, Indiana, Hammond, Indiana. But that also includes Chicago up there. So watch this region overnight. That weather is ongoing. 30% chance of wind events out there across the areas of the Missouri region, it looks like, for the most part. But it's a noisy night. Definitely a noisy night across portions of the Midwest and areas around Missouri. And also, eastern Kansas. This area does need a bunch of rainfall. It is specifically within the drought zone. So any specific rainfall activity that occurs out there, I'm sure is welcome out there in eastern Kansas, eastern Nebraska. We'll definitely pray for those folks out there that will include some heavy rainfall without the severe weather. All right, what else do we have? Anything else going on? Live stream up and running. Thanks for checking in there, Timothy. Welcome to the new members out there. We got about 13 new members coming up here in 3 days, at least in my time frame. We're giving away some prizes, folks. Get in on the member drawing. That's the only way to pick up on winning $50 or an Earthmaster t-shirt or a geology mining kit. The choice is yours, but it's coming up pretty quickly. Make sure you guys get in on that drawing. For now, we'll watch the area south of Southern California. Not seeing any major uptick here across the area, but south here, definitely. That's one to watch. We got to watch the momentum and the movement up here across the plate boundary. That gives us a good indicator of what's going on, what to expect. Catch you guys back here tomorrow sometime. Thursday, right? Thursday. Have a good one, folks.